You're listening to DraftKings Network.
Ha! 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 God damn it. God damn it. God damn it. God damn it. Ha! 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 Son of a bitch! God damn it! God damn it! God damn it! Son of a bitch!
That, of course, is Stone Cold Steve Austin getting into a cold tub.
Son of a bitch!
For the first time. We've got a big and solid and energetic crew today. We got back row Jessica. Charlotte Wilder has flown in. Greg Cote is here. I cannot wait to ask his son in moments why he thinks Greg Cote missed yesterday. His Greg Cote Tuesday. But before I do that, somebody writes in, I hope they fly Amin in and give him time to deep dive into that firing because ESPN is reporting Doc Rivers is a top candidate, and I am so confused. That was a bit of a stunner yesterday. 43 games in to the season, the team with the third best record in basketball has fired Adrian Griffin, who has gone through so many interviews to get that job, and he's done after 43 games. I mean, explain to me what happened here.
He lost the locker room. That's the quick and easy answer. In the NBA, it doesn't matter if your X's and O's are beyond reproach. It doesn't matter if you've got the best lineup data in the world. It doesn't matter if you've got a great relationship with your general manager, with ownership. If you lose the locker room, there's no coming back from that. They don't say, you know what, you lost us, but you got us back
But
later.
why did he lose them? How did he lose them? And how is Doc Rivers in play? How many good jobs are we going to give Doc Rivers to fail at?
So the Doc Rivers part, we need to set that aside. If you want to talk about why Adrian Griffin lost his job, we could talk about that. And then Doc Rivers is a completely different topic. But in one answer, I'll say Adrian Griffin, it was a bunch of small fissures over a long time, right? So it starts with, Chris Haynes brought this up yesterday on TNT. When he was hired, you got to remember what the Bucks were. It was, Giannis might leave. We don't know. He won't sign an extension. He had that interview where he said, if we don't do stuff, I'm leaving, right? Chris Middleton's a free agent. Damian Lillard isn't even a glint in John Horst's eye, right? And the team had an embarrassing ouster in the first round. So there was a feeling of this might be a time of transition for this team. And Adrian Griffin was a guy, like you said, had interviewed 14 times and had been assistant coach for a long time in this league and played in this league. And so this was kind of, all right, bring in some new blood, particularly because Bud had worn out his welcome and his stay with that locker room, and particularly probably with Giannis, right? So we get to training camp. And the first thing that happens is, now this happens with every new coach. It's your first time coaching. Guess what we're going to have next to you? An old head who's done it before, been there, done that.
Somebody who looks like Greg Cote.
Somebody who looks like Greg Cote.
A bench coach that you need to steady things because you're a new coach and you just need on the sideline somebody in a suit who looks like Greg Cote.
Someone on the, preferably with less embalming fluid. I don't know what's going on with your makeup.
You do look a little. You look a little embalmed.
Ready for the
Jessica,
casket.
Charlotte, Chris Cote. Can you give me an appraisal of the hue of Greg Cote?
Wow.
Bronzed and matte.
Matt.
Matt.
Whatever that means.
Matt Patricia.
Why are you putting people on the spot?
I don't think he looks that bad, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're not bad, Charlotte. That was
I
so
think
kind
Greg
of
looks
you.
amazing. I always think Greg looks amazing.
There you go. Thank you, Charlotte.
That bad.
The endless ray of positivity that is Charlotte Wilder.
His face does seem to be disappearing.
I don't know what that means.
I'll get back to you in a second.
Okay.
I do want to talk to Chris Cote. It was supposed to be Greg Cote Tuesday yesterday. Do any of you know why it was not Greg Cote Tuesday yesterday?
I got a text late on Monday that he wasn't feeling well.
Right. You said under the weather, and so I assumed he was sick. And when he came in here, I said, Greg, are you feeling okay? Are you feeling better? And he's, yeah. He's like, I was just down in the dumps yesterday. And
What?
I didn't feel like doing the show.
Aw.
What?
You okay, Greg?
It's true. Yeah, I don't know if we want to make fun of this. A lot of people need a mental health day.
Well, Dan probably will, but
I
we
know he
don't.
will.
Yeah, we don't.
No,
Dan
I
will.
just I had a bad Sunday and Monday, and it carried over. And this is not a normal job, as you all know. Like if I'm in a pissant mood, but I have to write a column, the reader's not going to know that I was in a pissant mood. If I'm in a pissant mood and I come on this show, I'm going to be awful, just useless. This is where you say more than usual.
How can you tell?
How can you tell? There we go. All right, I teed it up for you. So you have to be in a certain frame of mind to come in and do this show, and I was not yesterday morning. That's all.
Do you have it back in my day?
It's Wednesday.
I got you there,
Of course
Mike.
I don't.
Are you feeling better today, Greg?
I'm feeling better. Thank
Okay.
you.
It's a sliding scale.
I wish I had taken 2.5 years of mental health days. I mean, if having to be in the proper mood to do this is what's necessary, and you're not wrong. Like, of course, we should all have mental health days. Right. I don't assume that many of us would afford those to athletes. Hey, take a mental health day. You don't have to.
That's
work.
what I was just wondering.
You don't have to work today. Never mind that we pay you a lot of money to work.
What would the Greg Cote column have been if, for instance, Dan Marino said, didn't show up on Sunday?
I need a mental health day, and it just happens to be Sunday.
Yeah.
And can you imagine? Let's just say, hypothetically, Lamar Jackson needs Sunday as a mental health day.
Well, don't be ridiculous.
Do we have to do this? I was really into the Adrian Griffin dissection.
Plenty of time to talk. We've got many hours to discuss what was the confusing sports story of the day, which is, you say fissures over a long period of time. I mean, but 43 games is not a long period of time. I don't have. You tell me, because I haven't read everything about what precedent is here. This is a fairly shocking thing to happen this fast with a team that is otherwise, they might be underachieving, but they're still obviously very good, and we were assuming they would need time to figure it out.
David Blatt got fired 41 games into having the best record in the East and having come off a finals appearance.
But made a fool of himself. Made a fool of himself.
Some might argue
publicly.
Some might argue that almost losing to Detroit is making a fool of yourself. Some might argue that what got David Blatt fired was not the fighter pilot's quote or anything. It was he lost his locker room.
He was drawing up plays not for LeBron James at the end of games. He had LeBron James inbounding the ball.
But Dan, that's not what got him done in specifically. It's not like management said, "You did what? Get out of here. You're fired." It's he lost his locker room. Adrian Griffin lost his locker room. We don't have specifics of the plays that he drew up that were dumb or the schemes that he came up with or didn't come up with. We don't have those specifics right now. All we know is he lost the locker room, and most importantly, he lost the one guy you can't lose in the locker room, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
What do you make of the Terry Stotts reports? It looked like the veteran coaching presence that was on the bench was Terry Stotts, and he and Griff were at odds with one another.
So the reporting around it made it seem like this was a case of everyone had culpability. Terry Stotts was operating with a level of freedom and autonomy that isn't typical of an assistant coach. Adrian Griffin was perhaps incredibly reactive to do a public undressing, and I say public, I mean in front of the team, of Stotts in that situation. They both probably handle it poorly, but the reality is that's why you have a guy like Terry Stotts on the staff, to help someone who's never done this before, no matter how long you've done it as an assistant coach. There's a management of people that happens as a head coach that needs to occur. particularly when you're putting in things that are new to the team.
Didn't you tell us the story in Phoenix of a Shaq Phoenix team that fell apart in practice because you saw the revolt in practice? They weren't respecting their coach. They didn't want to run the offense the way he wanted it run.
And it wasn't in practice. It was training camp. That's why I say when you know, you know. I've seen it with my own eyes. We were, I think, 28-22 or something like that. We were a playoff team. We were like in the mix. It wasn't falling apart, but we all knew they're not following that guy anymore. So we can sit here and live for another 30, 40 games and then get bounced in the first round and say, well, that didn't work out. Or we can do something about it right now.
So you think it's a good move then, just based on once you lose the locker room, anyone's got to be fired, period.
Yes. Yeah, I believe that when you lose the locker room, particularly when you lose your superstar, more than anything, it's done. It doesn't come back from that.
Based on what you've said, it makes me wonder, does the team now say to Giannis, we're thinking of Doc Rivers. Is that okay with you? Are you good with Doc Rivers?
Before we bring up Doc Rivers, okay, because people in the NBA know this. I don't know how willing Amin is to speak to this part of it. Doc has charmed his way into an assortment of wonderful situations.
Wait up, Dan Lebatard. Wait, hold on. That's not my fault. It's not my fault.
That you're charming?
That I'm charming? That's a beautiful question, by the way. Very handsome question, but that's not my fault. I'm a nice guy.
A lot of people don't trust Doc Rivers' charm because he figures out ways to get in good positions that serve Doc Rivers. The reporting on this one was weird, though. Mike, can you explain to me what this?
Ooh, what an offense!
what the CNN arm of basketball is that would report Doc Rivers as a top candidate?
I'm fascinated by the reporting surrounding the replacement for Adrian Griffin. First, that Woj gets beat on a Doc Rivers rumor was pretty wild.
That was kind of wild. I mean, I texted him. I said, hey, Adrian, it's happening.
And then Woj quickly follows up that report with confirmation. But last night on the NBA on TNT, a Turner broadcast, they break the news to their viewing audience that CNN is reporting that Doc Rivers is the next coach of the Milwaukee Bucks.
I didn't know they did sports.
Didn't know, especially with Rachel not there anymore. Like, I had no idea that they were breaking stories. This is the flagship broadcast for Turner Sports, but the lead NBA insider, Chris Haynes, is not agreeing with this report. He's saying that they're talking, it's headed in that direction, but no deal is in place. So if you go to the story from CNN, it's this amorphous CNN staff. It's not a single reporter. So you have this weird situation where Turner's arm is not confirming this report. Shams and Woj are not confirming this report. CNN is reputable, but we can't ignore the fact that they're not breaking these types of stories.
They're reputable. Some people might.
Discovery Channel. They messed it all up.
Some people might argue that they're not credible. There are a whole lot of people in America who would say they're not credible.
Yeah, but when it comes to basketball, I do think that there is a warranted skepticism because they don't break reports.
Stugotz here from my friends over at Simply Safe. Been telling you about them for years. Why? I have had their home security system in my house for many, many years, protecting both me and my family. I would not recommend anyone else. In fact, they were named Best Home Security of 2023 by U.S. News and World Report. Simply Safe is comprehensive protection for the whole home, detecting and alerting you not only to break-ins, but fires, floods, and other threats to your home, getting you the help you need. Simply Safe prioritizes your privacy. That's why their indoor security cameras are the only ones on the market with physical privacy shutters to ensure your privacy 24/7. Try Simply Safe for 60 days, risk-free. If you don't love it, return your system for a full refund. Keep your home and family safer than ever in the new year. As a listener, you can save 20% on your new system with Fast Protect monitoring by visiting simplysafe.com/DLB. Customize your system in just minutes. That's simplysafe.com/DLB. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Don Lebatard.
We were talking to and about Freddie Gibbs, and then Greg Cote made an appearance, and Chris Cote made an appearance, and we were talking about the possibility of Freddie Gibbs actually having the rap album of the year, at which point Chris Cote, who is too young for this and doesn't know like athletes from the 90s, right. Chris Cote,
you okay?
Says, is that Barry Gibbs? Is he And so then the Bee Gees start playing.
Stugotz.
Well said.
A little bit of a struggle. A little bit rusty here.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
Well, that and also, like, your actual basketball part of your company is not saying yes. That's the big one, right? It would be like if ABC News reported I'm leaving, but ESPN said, well, hold the brakes.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of weird.
That part to me is the strangest because they're the same corp.
Mm-hmm.
They got to get on the same page here.
Gotta save it for the rest
Hold
of
the
day.
brakes
Sorry.
is holding the horses and tapping the brakes. What did you want to do there with hold the brakes?
Did I say hold the brakes?
It's
Well,
okay.
I didn't say it. Doc Rivers said it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him so damn charming, Dan. He makes little idiosyncratic mistakes that makes him more
Is it his job?
Are you alluding to Doc Rivers potentially doing something like behind the scenes while Griffin is in place? Because what you said is like, oh, Doc Rivers likes to finesse situations in order to be in the best possible situation for Doc Rivers. That doesn't seem that bad.
He was advising Adrian Griffin, wasn't he?
That's the interesting part about this, Charlotte.
He was advising Adrian Griffin while Adrian Griffin was having trouble keeping the locker room. Also, a big part of this is that the Bucks' defense completely cratered. They went from being a top 5 defense to being, as of yesterday morning, at ranked 22. And they were doing things that were inexplicable. And Giannis was like, why are we just letting anybody can shoot threes, anybody can go to the rim against us, have at it. And he said that publicly, which... Sure, you can say there are other fissures, but like once you're star, I also heard he lost Thanasis, which, you know,
Dude, let me tell you something. A vet coach would have made sure Thanasis is happy.
All of this is weird enough. I mean, that I'm not suggesting that Doc Rivers did anything wrong here. I'm just saying it's suspicious enough that a lot of stuff here feels like it's got questions on it because this is a super unusual thing to happen when they just got Damian Lillard. Like these are not flippant decisions. This must have been so obvious to them that they can't even get through half a season without realizing. Do you know how rare it is for a team to make an investment and immediately say to itself, wow, we got that one wrong? Like usually they're stubborn about figuring out how to make themselves look smart because they don't want the public embarrassment of this.
But it's not
because this looks like you don't know what you're doing.
But Dan, this is the truism of the NBA is that we will tolerate almost everything, any sort of incompetence. What we won't tolerate is you losing your locker room, particularly your superstar. Because if you make the wrong decisions, we drew up the wrong play, we had the wrong defensive scheme. Like, we can live through that. We say he's a first-time coach, he'll figure it out. But when the guys in the locker room are like, F that guy, dude, it's over. It doesn't matter how good you are or how good you can be.
Looping in what you said at the beginning, which was establishing the timeline of the hire, and Dan just saying right now, it looks like they didn't know what they were doing. I think it's fair to say at the time of hiring him, they did not know what they were doing. They did not know which direction the team was going in. And had they acquired Damian Lillard before they made the decision on the head coach, it probably would have gone in a completely different direction.
Kevin O'Connor at The Ringer wrote that they were considering Nick Nurse, and a big part of the Adrian Griffin hire was that Giannis backed Griffin because he didn't want to play for Nick Nurse. So it seems like that if that's true, it was sort of like, Giannis wants a different guy, and here's the different guy, so let's go with him.
If the end game is Lillard on the Heat, things are going perfect, folks. Things are going
the curse
perfect.
of the Dame trade.
I mean, what's his name? Doc Rivers isn't a guy that's going to win you. I mean, I know he's won a title with the Celtics, but it's been bad.
A lot of Game 7 losses. No one has lost more Game 7s than that guy has. And when I bring up the fact that there are people in the NBA who don't trust how good he is at sales, and when you talk, I mean, about some of the stuff that poisons teams and the selfishness that is required to be eradicated when you're a team. You see what's happening with Halliburton, right? He rushes back because he's got incentives in his contract that give him $41 million if he's all NBA, and he gets hurt again. And when he gets hurt again, the Pacers' chances with that kind of selfishness get neutered because you've got money in play, self-interest in play. You've got so many egos in this locker room. The pressure is greatest on who in that locker room? It's Lillard, right? He's got to go there and make that work, right? Because Giannis has already won. So if they don't win with Lillard, he's the one who's got the most pressure on him. How do you lose Lillard in 43 games?
I don't know that he lost Lillard. We might have lost Lillard as part of a larger collection of people, the entire locker room. But again, if Giannis is like, nah, that's my guy, they're giving him every opportunity to turn it around.
I would argue the pressure's on the Bucks to keep Dame happy. And to keep Dame wanting to be here. And if Dame's out on Adrian, like, I actually see, like, you were saying that most of the time teams are too stubborn to admit they were wrong and they lose a season, then they lose in the second round, and all of a sudden everyone's pissed. They're getting out ahead of it. They're like, this wasn't working, so we're going to rip the Band-Aid now and not waste an entire Dame year.
I tend to agree with Chris there in that the Doc Rivers hire is questionable and that we've already lamented the type of coach that he's been in the playoffs, but getting out ahead of it and trying to find a coach that can win your locker room back when Dame didn't want to be there to begin with. Like, that is a part of this conversation, is he didn't want to be there. And early on in the season, you heard comments from Giannis about team defense that were really interesting in those first 15, 20 games of the year, even as they were winning games, because you replaced Drew Holiday with Damian Lillard, who's not a good on-ball defender or team defender.
Jeremy, I appreciate that you have spoken up here, and I want to get to something that happened yesterday. Mike Ryan, people have been yelling at both you and me for our analysis of the Terry Rozier trade, and they have all sided with Jeremy Taché, who brought good information about the pick and roll, and that our information is dated on Rozier because we're talking about the player that we saw 4 or 5 years ago. I am curious on Amin's thoughts on what kind of player the Miami Heat got, but are you willing to walk back some of your criticism of the Miami Heat yesterday? I believe you described yourself as sad as Greg Cote was yesterday.
Wow.
I will walk it back and I will give Terry Rozier a fresh start. As you know, in the NBA, it typically takes 9 to 10 years for a player to find his form, for you to truly make a ruling on a player. And the fact that Terry Rozier has had a great season as a looter in a riot for a terrible Charlotte team does make me a bit excited.
Right here, Mike.
Look, the pick and roll numbers are good. I did like the side-by-side StatMuse graph of Damian Lillard and Terry Rozier's year. And no matter what, we are going from the player that I hated most to possibly the player that I hated the second most, but that is still very much an upgrade. So I deleted some tweets, and I'm here to say, welcome to Miami, Terry.
Ridiculous. Like, let's get something clear. You're not getting 25 points a game, Terry Rozier. That's not what you wanted to get if you're Miami. You want someone who, A, can guard point of attack better than Kyle, which is
Can Terry do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because for 9 years he hasn't been a great defender.
He was really good in Boston.
He was good.
Everybody was pretty good in Boston, and then people leave Boston and they're funny in the light.
Right. So
Scary Terry.
The Miami Heat, like that, there's no one that comes here and gets worse at playing defense.
Like, hey, I was okay, and then I got to Miami, and now I'm really terrible at it. Like, the whole point was,
You just said Kyle Lowry.
This is a guy, and he was great at it before.
I mean, nobody gets worse at defense. Kyle Lowry did get worse at defense.
Is this your apology, Mike? Is this you walking it back?
It was more heartfelt off air.
I'm giving him a fresh start. Jeremy had very good information. They're all data points. I talk to people that I respect, like you, Izzy. You guys know ball. Jeremy knows this team. I'm willing to say that, yeah, they need a scorer, and if he plays the way that he's played this season, sure, that's a clear and obvious upgrade.
To me, that's a corrupted view of it. It's like, oh, we got this scoring. No. It starts with.
I haven't apologized well enough for you guys.
Because
I don't know what to say. He's amazing.
No, you're pointing at the wrong things. He's a guy that, yes, his defense slipped in Charlotte when he's playing for an awful team, and when he got to realize his dream of, I'm more than just a guy who guards and hits an occasional three. I can be a lead scorer for a team. He did that. It was awful. It was great for him individually, but for the team and for the winning experience, it was awful. He comes here. It's like, I don't have to be that guy anymore. I remember when Trevor Ariza won a championship with the Lakers and then said, thanks, but I'm taking the same exact money to go to Houston. Why? Because I'm going to be an all-star. And then he went to Houston, he went to Orlando, and eventually he found out, oh, wow, I'm not an all-star caliber player. And he came back and he became a very good role player on the back end of his career.
You guys are talking about defense. This team needs somebody who can make tough shots, who can do things in the mid-range, who can help Tyler Hero. Their offense is constipated, and they need another shot maker to give some Tyler Hero relief. So, yeah, he'll play some defense, but that's secondary.
That's not secondary.
For them, it is. They won't play anybody who won't play defense.
That's my point. That's my point. They won't. It's not secondary. They won't play anybody who won't play defense. So the fact that he's coming here and he's going to get these minutes and he's going to get these opportunities, he makes them better defensively, which, by the way, they've been worse recently. They've gotten worse defensively. Like, it's not your top 5 defense from earlier in the season. So that is an issue. That is a concern, and that is always going to be their priority.
They got worse when Hero got back at defense.
Okay. So?
I just appreciate that Amin has said everything I was trying to say yesterday. It means a lot to me that we went on this apology tour.
Greg Cote, any thoughts?
Yeah.
This is a new and unimproved Dan Le Batard show with the Stugotz. Gamble on by DraftKings. Dan Le Batard.
Chris Cote does an impression. Just be careful.
Dangerous game here. This is a dangerous game.
I don't want to play this game.
No, he was saying, man, I could do such a great Kendrick Perkins.
No, I don't want to play this game.
He's like, man, I can talk just like him.
This is who we're going to trust
Amin,
with
you
this.
do it. Let's let Amin do it, I think.
Stugotz.
I think you could do it, Chris, because you did a great Charles Barkley. You're 1 for 1 there.
Did no one just hear the segment we just did with Amin? We cannot be taking
judgment is not the best.
counsel from the local drunk on whether or not you should do the impersonation of a black man stumbling over his words. Like, you don't see the bad judgment in that.
There it was.
Moses Moody? Moses?
Don't.
Moody?
You need that. It sounds
Chris.
worse.
Be careful, man.
We cannot do this. It's too close to the line. This is where the line is. Something legitimately funny can't be funny because we're scared our ginger's going to do something racist by accident.
Carry the hell on, Dan.
Rachel.
Dan, the line is where we feel alive, though.
This is the Dan Le Batard show with the Stugotz.
A formal and heartfelt and public apology to Greg Cote with no sarcasm in my voice. That was mean what we just did to you, and I want to apologize publicly on behalf of all of Meadowlark Media. You were going to ask Amin something that you wanted before we bring in David Samson. You wanted to ask Amin something because Amin is an unusually qualified expert to attack this from all angles, and and we didn't get his answer.
Well,
so please ask.
Wait, that's the apology, not the whole mental health day thing.
I apologize.
And your reaction to it.
It was all of it.
Okay.
It was all of it.
All
I
right,
stand
good.
with you, Dan.
I'm apologizing.
Don't backtrack.
Thank you.
we
Double down.
apologize
Double down.
For him.
because we all did that.
I apologize. Thank you. Now I've got to correct my.
And you never apologized to Jeremy. I was out there in the foxhole by myself.
You guys go ahead and apologize for me here. I'm tired. I need 2,000 mental health days.
We
Please
should all apologize to one another all at the same time.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. I'm sorry, Dan. I'm sorry, Greg.
Jeremy, I haven't really given you a fair shake.
Jeremy, nice job.
I'm sorry, Dan. I'm sorry to the listeners. I'm sorry to
You have a kind disposition.
I'm sorry to David Sampson. He's got to wait for us to do this stuff.
I really miss you yesterday, especially when the show went shit. I could have used you saying, how's this going?
And GQ.
Should we apologize to
Jason and everyone back
That
there.
interview
I'm
yesterday
sorry
was
to
bad. You did a great job.
I don't want to
Apologize to Lewis. He got sassy.
Sorry to Thomas.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Greg Cote is saying in the middle of that, why am I apologizing?
What?
Okay.
Well, who does Greg have to apologize to?
First of all, the best thing you can get from Mike is a fresh start. So Mike has granted Terry Rozier a fresh start, which Terry's going to be so happy about. I am granting you a fresh start as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Now, I want to Amin is an NBA insider like very few other pundits are. And so he's in the know on this, I suspect. If Giannis is powerful enough to have a coach fired, I suspect he's also powerful enough to have a coach hired. And so do they run it past Giannis before saying, Doc, come on in?
So, first of all, I would not say that Giannis got him fired. It wasn't like he walked into an office and said, get rid of this guy. But if you lose someone, you lose them. And it's clear to the front office that he was lost. Now, to answer your question, I'm pretty sure that the conversation about Doc Rivers has been had with all relevant stakeholders. And the reason for that is because, hey, this guy, as Charlotte mentioned earlier, was actually around over a month ago, right after the IST semifinal loss to Indiana, they brought in Doc as an advisor. Now, that doesn't mean he's been talking to the team, but he was definitely familiar with the coaching staff and familiar with some of the issues that Milwaukee has had. Also familiar to the front office staff. So there's an avenue, a channel there that Doc Rivers has had for over 6 weeks or whatever, that pick any other unemployed head coach, Jeff Van Gundy, Mark Jackson, whoever, they haven't had that same kind of access. So when this thing starts to build steam, yes, you're going to consult your star player on this because, not because you consult him on everything, but because we got this last one so off, you want to make sure he gives a blessing to it.
David Samson, Adrian Griffin fired with a 30-13 record. What do you think of what's happening there and Giannis's involvement?
I think there was a mutiny on Michigan. There's no other possible explanation I have. Doc Rivers had been available. Well, you can say that Giannis hadn't signed that extension prior to Griffin being hired. It is unrealistic that he was not consulted. It's unrealistic that he wasn't consulted prior to the firing. The players did a mutiny, and Haslam was all in for it, and Doc Rivers was in waiting. And Doc Rivers, I assume, was part of the architect of that mutiny because it's all planned and all set. So I think it's just a dangerous precedent. I know the NBA is all about player power, but I'll tell you, when you start with that sort of thing at 30-13, the analytics say they're 25-17. Give me a break. They're 30-13. I just think it's dangerous.
I don't think this is about player empowerment or too much power to players. I feel like this is a case where the locker room was lost. Management saw that. They saw that you can't succeed if you don't have the right structures in place. A lot of things that I've heard or read was that Griffin was not putting structure in place, or people didn't feel like they knew what to do or where to go. And the minute you start doing that, the minute there aren't clear expectations in an organization, people feel lost, they get frustrated, things start to blow up internally. So I actually think it was very impressive of the Bucks to say, you know what, we're gonna cut this now before we lose in the first round again. And everyone said we knew in January.
David did something there that was more aggressive than what I did. He accused Doc Rivers of orchestrating the mutiny. Like, that's really aggressive, David.
I think I said participating.
Wait,
it's different than
David did that?
Yes.
I mean, you came out the gates with that take.
No, I did not say it like that. I did not say it like that. You're saying he participated in the mutiny. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there are a whole lot of questions here.
You merely alluded to it.
I didn't say that.
David, I want to ask you, in 2003, you fired Torberg as your manager after 38 games, and then Jack McKeon became manager and you guys won the World Series. How did you know this isn't the right guy for us?
Well, I think when he wanted to beat the shit out of me was the first clue that I had when he physically attacked me. That was one. But no, Torberg had been our manager in Montreal, and he was the manager who took over for Philippe Alou because of the relationship that Jeffrey Loria had with him. And he was just terrible for the organization. He was there was nothing positive about him at all. And when the team started to not play well in 2003 and he had spent money on Pudge Rodriguez, we were able to convince him. We did a mutiny on Torborg in order to get him out when we did. And the fact that we got Jack hired, he didn't know Jack at all. That was a suggestion of our GM, and that was just lucky.
So, but David, okay, of those details that you provided, how much of those were public at or around the time of the firing?
None of them.
So it's possible that there's things happening behind the scenes that we don't know about that compel Milwaukee
There must
to say,
be.
This can't be our guy.
So the thing that I first went to, and I said this on Nothing Personal this morning, I went to divorce, I went to arrest, I went to some sort of harassment, assault. Something acute had to have happened. And then
off the court, you're saying you thought that was your first thought it was something off the court?
With Adrian. That was the only explanation I could possibly think of for a 30-13 team to do it. And then I worked my way to mutiny on Michigan, because that's the other possibility when this sort of thing happens. It's not that the owners all of a sudden said, oh, he lost the locker room, we'll make a change. There are managers and coaches who lose the locker room on a daily basis. They get it back. You're saying you can never get it back once it's gone, but there's fights that happen, there's disagreements, there's arguments. This guy interviewed 14 times. You knew what you were hiring. It's like hiring Dan Campbell and saying, oh, I didn't realize he would be hard-nosed. He is what he is, Adrian Griffin was not an unknown entity. So I don't think that you can change your philosophy after 43 successful games. It's not a smart way to go unless something acute happened or there was a full orchestrated mutiny.
Do you not think that it's acute enough if you have Dame and Giannis together who are supposed to win a championship or it's a failure and you've lost them?
Oh, I hear what you're saying, but I think that after 43 games, it's half a season. That's pretty hard to say when you're fourth best record or third or second in the East or whatever, that there may be discontent in the clubhouse. They may not like the plays that are being called or the rotation. There's myriad things that can go wrong between a coach in a locker room and his players. But to have something happen like this with Doc Rivers all of a sudden ready to go, that is not just, there's a problem in the clubhouse.
David, the only thing I would say is when I say lost the locker room, that to me is a very extreme statement. I'm not talking about, man, F coach, I can't believe he didn't drop the play for me or he sat me. I'm not talking about those little tiffs that happened. I'm talking about
it had to be
1 through 17. Nobody believes in you.
It had to be so bad, for this to happen. We don't know anything about what was happening behind the scenes yet. That's going to leak in the coming days.
I'm going to tell you guys right now, because David, I was in a situation where we've hired Coach Terry Porter, and then 50 games in before the All-Star break. Actually, we fired him during All-Star break when we were hosting All-Star Weekend in Phoenix. And we spent a month and a half lying to ourselves about, well, maybe. And this was a guy that he played with Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr and him were very good friends. So there was this thing of just give him some time, let him find his footing. But everything was pointing to, the guy didn't know what he was doing. And this is a guy who had been a head coach in the league before and had been a long-time assistant with some very reputable coaches and obviously a long and illustrious playing career. But he didn't know what he was doing. And more importantly, everyone in the locker room believed he didn't know what he was doing. You reach a point where
you didn't know that when you hired him?
No.
How is that possible?
Because in this case, the case of the Bucks, you keep saying, David, you keep pointing to their good record, how many games they've won. They're winning in spite of Adrian Griffin. They're winning because Dame will hit a three, which is what he was brought in to do, but he's not being used enough on offense. They will win because Giannis will score 64 points, and you still are barely winning against these teams.
They should look better than Boston. They should look better than Boston.
And I want to be clear that this happens sometimes, Charlotte, where sometimes it just isn't clicking. Again, we go back to Miami 2010 and 2011, 9-8 to start. It's it's not working, but most everyone believed, look, we're going to figure this out. They reach a point where nobody believes. I'm not talking about nobody believed in the guy. And that's part of being a coach. And this is the part that breaks a lot of people's hearts because good people, smart people, hardworking people lose their jobs. But I say again and again, you have to have their trust and belief. If you don't have that, it doesn't matter.
In the example you're using, and this part matters, Spo was Wade's guy and Spo was Riley's guy. That matters.
Yes.
That's what organizational support is.
Yes.
You can allow the players to run the locker room if you want.
If Wade had also been he ain't it, Spo wouldn't be here right now.
Wait saved?
Yeah, go ahead.
You think that Wade saying that would overrule Riley saying that Spo is it?
I think if 15 guys in the locker room said he's not it, he would have been out. You know how I know? There's a gentleman named Stan Van Gundy who was very successful and very tenured and knew what he was doing and lost the locker room. And Riles, who Stan was his guy, that was his guy. Before Spo, Stan was his guy. Riles looked at him in the eye and said, you got to go. Because he lost the locker room.
In that situation, Riley's the charming Doc Rivers who gets to coach Dwayne Wade.
Of course.
And he would have been again.
It's a little bit easier to do when you can step into the breach and just name yourself the coach.
But at the same time, why didn't he do that with Spo? Why didn't he have the itch, so to speak? Because it wasn't a unanimous, this guy got to go.
They played 17 games, is why.
I'm just saying, there's a part of this where you have the belief that nobody in that locker room is on his side.
Samson, stay there. We're coming back with Samson after this.